Yeah, you know who it is, and for those of you that don't, I'm Cytonius, the opposite of the phoniest! From Speekgeek Unlimited. And if you recognize this... then you have my eternal respect. For most people who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, there's a strong chance that Japanese anime was an important part of your childhood. Shows like Sailor Moon, Dragon Ball Z, and Gundam Wing helped to reshape the perception of what television animation for kids could do. Characters like Hiro Yui, Sarina Tsukino, and Goku gave kids a different type of animated protagonist. While we did have animation here in the States that was going beyond the limitation of what animated action shows could do, anime was just different. And one of the unsung forefathers of the 90s anime movement was an underrated gem called Ronin Warriors. The irony is that Ronin Warriors isn't even a 90s anime show. It's actually from the 80s. The original Japanese name of the series is Yoroiden Samurai Torupen, or Legendary Armored Samurai Trooper. The show first aired in 1988 and ran for 39 episodes and was the brainchild of a group of writers who operated under the pseudonym Hajime Yatate and worked for the Japanese animation studio Sunrise. The show was created to capitalize on the popularity of the Bishonen anime manga series Saint Seiya, which had massive success among Japanese boys and girls in the 80s. The word Bishonen originated in the Chinese poem The Eight Immortals of the Wine Cup, and it's a term that translates to beautiful young boy and has a very strong presence in Japanese pop culture. The Bishonen aesthetic is typically characterized in manga and anime by young men with mildly or overtly androgynous features who are exceptionally good at everything. The first season of Samurai Troopers was directed by Masashi Ikeda, who would go on to work on another Bishonen animated series, Gundam Wing. The first season was popular enough for a second season to be greenlit, which was directed by Mamoru Hamatsu. Unfortunately, for a series designed to sell merchandise, the series was actually considered a bit of a failure for not living up to the merchandising popularity of Saint Seiya and the various Gundam shows up to that point, and was canceled in March of 1989 in Japan. After the cancellation of the series in '89, the Samurai Troopers would go on to have 3 original video animation follow-ups, the first being the 2-part series Samurai Troopers Gaiden, and the second being the 4-part series Legend of the Armor of Inferno, and the third being a 5-part series called The Message, which was intended to be a soft reboot of the series, where the Samurai Troopers got new armor. I'll talk about that in another video at another time. In the early 90s, Jim and Stephanie Graziano of Graz Entertainment would purchase the rights to the series, and the Vancouver-based Ocean Studios would dub the series for American television. CNR Entertainment would distribute the show, localizing the series for an American audience. Many of the Japanese elements of the show would be changed. The name Yoroiden Samurai Troopers would be changed to Ronin Warriors to avoid confusion with 2 other American-produced, team-based Japanese-influenced shows, VR Troopers and Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad. Even the theme song would get an American update, with the Japanese theme song of the first season, Stardust Eyes, and the second season intro, Samurai Heart,
して稲妻集めたら My heart 孤独が光る何を目指せばいい誰を愛したらいい My love 答えはどこさ誰もが遠い旅人さこの街では迷い子になる明日も歩き続けるさ心は侍虚しさなく鎧を脱ぎ捨てよう勇気だけの素肌で
Being changed to
Fantastic battle armored samurai.
Ronin Warriors. Ronin Warriors.
Together, they face the otherworldly forces of the evil dynasty,
The powers in the armor.
calling on the spirits of ancient samurai warriors.
The powers in the armor.
All five have been given super-powered fighting skills and weapons to wield against this tyranny.
Justice.
Might,
Wisdom. Trust. To arms.
Ronin Warriors will make its American debut on June 26, 1995, on non-cable local television stations across the United States. Aside from removing the Japanese opening and closing theme song, this series retains its original Japanese soundtrack, unlike many of the other animated shows around this time. This series is one of the first shows of the American television 90s anime wave and predates shows like Pokemon, Cowboy Bebop, Gundam Wing, and even Dragon Ball Z in the United States. The term Ronin in Japanese originally was a word used to describe a samurai who had no master, and in more modern terms, it means someone who is unemployed or lacks social status, like a bum or a vagrant. So, a Ronin warrior is technically a bummy warrior. Another aspect of the series that was lost in translation is the connection to Asian history, with the American version showing the samurai troopers as multinational teenagers with characters like Sai of the Torrent having a soft British accent and Rowan of the Strata having a Brooklyn accent, even though all of the Ronins are Japanese. This change was made to piggyback off of shows like Captain Planet and the Planeteers and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, who all had a multicultural main cast. In the Japanese version of the show, the troopers were the teenage descendants of famous samurai that lived during the Sengoku Jidai, or Warring States era of Japan, where Japanese samurai clans were at constant war. Just about every aspect of the series is drenched in Japanese samurai history and Asian philosophy, with everything from the design of the 5 troopers and the design of the armors having some sort of historical reference, such as the armors being powered by the 5 natural elements of Japanese Buddhism and the guiding virtues of Confucianism. The armors were designed by Japanese artist Hideo Okamoto, who's known in Japan for his character designs on the various Gundam shows, and for his designs on the 90s era Godzilla films, and for his designs on the Super Sentai series, Ninja Sentai Kakuranger, or as we know it in the States, the 3rd season of Power Rangers. You know, the season with the Alien Rangers. The plot of the series is that the 5 samurai troopers who were given mystical armor have to fight against the demon Emperor Tulpa and his 4 dark warlords of the dynasty, with help from college student Mia Koji and a young 8-year-old boy named Yuli. Like any other shonen anime of that era, this series has plenty of action, special attacks, memorable characters, and Bishonen brotherly bonding. Ryo Sanada, which in America was mispronounced as Ryo, is the unofficial leader of the group and is the descendant of the Sanada clan, or as they're also known in Japan, the Sanada 10 Braves. The Sanada clan was a family of legendary samurai and ninja who existed during the 16th century of Japan. Ryo's armor design is based on the armor of the Sanada clan, but has the crest symbol of the Takeda samurai clan, who had close ties to the Sanada family. Ryo's armor is powered by the element of fire and is known in Japanese as the Yoroi no Reka, or the armor of wildfire. The armor of wildfire is guided by the Confucian virtue of righteousness. This was changed in the American version to just Virtue. Ryo also possesses the armor of Inferno, which is created by merging the guiding virtues of the other armors. In the American version of the series, the armor of Inferno belonged to the first Ronin warrior, Hariel, who didn't exist in the Japanese version. The character Hariel was created by the toy manufacturer Playmates, who thought that kids would be confused by two Ryo figures with different armor. A fun fact about the armor of Inferno is that the original idea was that any of the samurai troopers would be able to summon their own version of the white armor, but that idea was scrapped. Ryo is voiced by Matt Hill, who gives Ryo a bit of a surfer dude voice. You probably know Matt Hill best as the voice of Ed on Ed, Edd and Eddy. Seiji Date, or as he's known in America, Sage of the Halo, is the Ronin Warrior of Light and is the descendant of Date Masamune, who was a feared and respected samurai and daimyo during feudal Japan. Most fans of the series recognize Sage for his blonde hair, which covers his right eye. This is actually a reference to Date Masamune, who was called the One-Eyed Dragon due to missing one of his eyes. Sage is a master of the martial art kendo and uses the nodachi, which translates to long field sword and was used by the Date clan. The design of the armor of Halo is loosely based on Date Masamune's armor, with Sage's helmet having the same yellow crescent across the forehead. A fun fact about the Masamune armor is that it's the inspiration for the look of Darth Vader. The armor of Halo's guiding virtue is grace, but was changed in America to wisdom. This was done because Sage was considered the most mature of the Ronin Warriors. Sage was voiced by Michael Donovan, who also voiced the character Sai of the Torrent, or as he's known in the Japanese version, Shin Mori. Sai is the pacifist of the group and is the descendant of the Japanese naval general Montanari Mori. The design of the armor of Torrent is based more on its need to function underwater and less on traditional samurai armor. The color of the armor is aquatic blue, and the helmet even has a metallic fin for treading water, similar to a shark or a dolphin. Sai's weapon of choice is called the yari, or the spear. The armor of Torrent's guiding virtue is trust. Tome Hashiba possesses the armor of Tenku, or the armor of the sky, and is known in the American dub of the series as Rowan of the Strata. Toma is the descendant of the samurai Hashiba Hidekatsu, who is the adopted son of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, who was one of the great unifiers of Japan during the feudal era of the 15th century. Rowan is the archer of the group and is a master of the martial art Kyudo, and uses the Yumi and the Ya, or as we know it here in the States, the bow and arrow. His armor's guiding virtue is wisdom, but was changed to life force in the American version. What's not mentioned in the series is that Rowan is actually the brains of the group and has an IQ of 250. Rowan is voiced by Ward Perry. Shure Fan is the fifth member of the group and possesses the Yore no Kango, or the armor of stone, and has the guiding virtue of justice. Shu is renamed in the American version of the series as Kento of Hard Rock. In the Japanese version, Shure Fan is the only samurai trooper of Chinese lineage and is rumored to be the descendant of Genghis Khan. In both the American and Japanese version of the series, Shu or Kento are battle-hungry goofballs with a bottomless stomach. Sound familiar? Kento was voiced by Canadian actor Jason Gray Stanford, who probably had the most successful career post-Ronin Warriors, appearing in shows like Grey's Anatomy, Monk, and Supergirl. And of course voicing anime characters like Joe Higashi in the Fatal Fury movies and Raditz in the Ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z. Unlike a lot of other shonen anime shows, Ronin Warriors has a fairly small supporting cast. The troopers are usually seen with their white tiger, Byakyun, or as he's better known in the United States, White Blaze. White Blaze belonged to the warrior monk Kaios, who was renamed the Ancient One in the American dub of the series. In both versions, the Ancient One is the creator of the 9 armors and acts as the Zordon to the Ronin Warriors Power Rangers. Mia Koji is the granddaughter of Professor Koji, who is an expert on Japanese history and mysticism. Mia provides exposition and background information on the dynasty and the 5 Ronin armors. In the Japanese version of the series, her name is Nastiagyu.
Oh, that's nasty.
And she's a direct descendant of Jubei Yagyu Mitsuyoshi. For all my anime heads, Jubei Yagyu is the inspiration for Jubei Kimagami from the anime Ninja Scroll and was one of the most celebrated samurai in Japanese history. And no shonen anime would be complete without an adolescent boy to appeal to its target audience. Jun Yamano, or Yuli, is an 8-year-old boy whose parents were abducted by the dynasty. Jun is rescued by the Ronin Warriors and becomes a surrogate little brother to the team. Most fans of the series would agree that Yuli is one of the most useless characters in anime, but the writers of the series had intentions to make Yuli a second-generation samurai trooper. The main villain of the series is the demon Emperor Arago, who is renamed Tulpa. Unlike many anime villains, Tulpa isn't made out to be sympathetic or redeemable. He's pure evil. This was done to make Tulpa a force of nature. The design of Tulpa's armor bears a resemblance to several samurai throughout history, which would make sense since his armor is the basis for the other 9 armors. Tulpa was voiced by Egyptian actor Mina Mina, who gives Tulpa a bit of a Scottish or Dutch accent.
I call upon the spirits of the netherworld. Rise up now from your dog sleep. Rise up now to serve your master.
Which is weird because he's supposed to be an evil Japanese emperor. Hey, do you, Mina Mina? We just living in your world. Instead of Confucian virtues, the armor of the Dark Warlords are powered by Bushido virtues, but those virtues were corrupted by Tulpa and keeps the Warlords from using the armors to their full potential. Instead of their armors being powered by the natural elements like the troopers, their armors are actually powered by the 4 seasons. Unlike the samurai troopers who are modern-day teenagers, the Dark Warlords are thousands of years old and lived during feudal Japan. Each of the Warlords' armors bear the resemblance to different animals. The Warlords are usually paired against the troopers based on their opposing elements. For example, Sage is the Warrior of Light, and his main opponent is the Warlord of Darkness. Sai is the Warrior of Water, and his main opponent is the Warlord of Venom and Poison. Kento is the Warrior of Stone and is defined by his strength and physicality, and his main opponent is the Warlord of Illusion, which makes their conflict physical strength versus mental cleverness. Anubis was intended to be the main opponent for Rowan, but because Rowan isn't given much to do in the first season, and Anubis becomes a good guy in the second season, most of Anubis' fights are against Ryo. In the Japanese version of the series, his name is actually Toshitada Koma, and he goes by the title Demon Lord Shutendoji, and his armor is based on the ogre. His armor's guiding virtue is loyalty, and his armor is powered by the season of spring. Shutendoji is the warlord of cruelty, but if his armor was used for good, he could spread peace to human beings. Anubis was the most popular Dark Warlord and had the most character development. Anubis, or Shutendoji, is the Green Ranger of the series. He starts off as a villain and later becomes an ally to the samurai troopers, and even takes on the title of the Ancient One in Season 2. A fun fact about Shutendoji is that he actually predates the Green Ranger by about 3 years in Japan. Burai, or the Dragon Ranger, made his first appearance in 1992 in the series Koryo Zentai Zyuranger, and is the first 6th Ranger of the Super Sentai franchise, which would go on to inspire Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which would go on to create the foundation of the fan base of Ronin Warriors. If Anubis sounds familiar, it's because he was voiced by British-Canadian actor Paul Dobson, who 90s anime fans might remember as the voice of Dimitri from the anime Darkstalkers Revenge based on the video game of the same name, and as Zarbon in the Ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z, and as Wolfgang Krauser from the anime OVA Fatal Fury 2: The New Battle. And of course, we can't forget his special attack.
Quake with me!
The second Dark Warlord is Anubis. Yes, Anubis, who is renamed Kale, the Warlord of Darkness and Corruption. His armor is based on the design of the Egyptian Jackal of Death, who is also named Anubis. His armor's guiding virtue is obedience and is powered by the winter season. If he used his armor's powers for good, he could cure blindness. His real name is Kujiro Sasaki. Kale was voiced by Richard Newman, whose voice you may recognize as Rhinox from Beast Wars, and as the voice of...
Yes! Yes!
Rajura is the warlord of illusion, and his armor is based on the design of a spider, and his armor is powered by the season of summer. Rajura was renamed Deus in the American version of the series, and his armor's guiding virtue is serenity. If Rajura used his armor for good, he could cure mental illness. His real name is Jirogoro Kurauda. Deus was voiced by Matt Smith, who voiced Tien Han in the Ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z. Naza is the warlord of Venom, and his armor is based on the design of a snake, and his armor is powered by the autumn season. Naza was renamed Sekhmet for the American dub. The name Sekhmet comes from the Egyptian deity who was actually a woman and was the goddess of healing. Her design was actually based on a lion and not a snake. If Sekhmet uses armor for good, he would be able to cure disease. His real name is Naotoki Yamanochi. Sekhmet was voiced by Ward Perry. Lady Kyra could be considered the 5th Dark Warlord and makes her first appearance in episode 28 of the 2nd season in the episode Lady Kyra and the Dark Realm. Lady Kyra is the last living descendant of the Tayusu clan, or the clan of the ancients. She was abducted by the dynasty as a young child and brainwashed by the evil priest Baraman to be a servant for Tulpa. Lady Kyra was more powerful than all 4 Dark Warlords combined, and was able to take on all 5 of the Ronin Warriors by herself. Lady Kyra is eventually freed from her brainwashing by Anubis, who sacrifices his life to break the dynasty's control on her, and gives her his armor and staff of the Ancient One. And while this is never mentioned in the series, Lady Kyra is only 12 years old. Lady Kyra was voiced by Jane Perry, who isn't related to Ward Perry, who voiced Rowan and Sekhmet. The series introduced several other warlords and villains after the first season, like Serenbo, the Sun Devil, and Lord Kenbukyo, who was renamed Lord Saberstrike for the American version, and has one of the best special moves in the entire series. So you would think a show with multicolored stylized samurai armor, special attacks, and pretty boy superheroes would have blown up in the 90s. But unfortunately, Ronin Warriors didn't enjoy the commercial success of 90s anime shows like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, or the critical acclaim of Cowboy Bebop. By the time Ronin Warriors aired on American syndicated television in the summer of 1995, the show had already been canceled in Japan 6 years before, and was only a moderate success when it originally aired. One of the major setbacks of the Samurai Trooper franchise, whether it be in Japan or America, is that it owes its existence to more successful brands that came before it. Would I recommend Ronin Warriors to newer anime fans who are raised on shows like My Hero Academia or Attack on Titan? No. And the reason is because that's not who this show is for. And yes, the show does have recycled animation, and the characters don't have a lot of personality, and yes, the plot is simple and unoriginal. For people my age who are in their 30s and 40s, a lot of us grew up before anime was a mainstream thing. Ronin Warriors was a revelation for us, and while the show isn't known for its character development, it does make attempts at trying to give the characters some type of dimension, with characters like Kento struggling with his anger, and the thought that his love for fighting will turn him into a Dark Warlord. Ryo struggles with self-doubt, and Anubis and Lady Kyra struggle with the concepts of good and evil after being brainwashed by the dynasty. If there was a central theme to the series, I would say it's about living to fulfill your purpose, and the power of friendship. The Ronin Warriors are empowered because they live by the non-corrupted virtues of the armors, while the Dark Warlords constantly lose because they allowed themselves to be corrupted by greed and power. Ronin Warriors isn't deep or groundbreaking, and it doesn't need to be. It's entry-level shonen anime, and that's okay. So if you're a fan of the series and haven't watched it in a while, give it another look, and I hope this video shed some light on some of the missing details that were lost in translation. And if you like this video and want to see more from Speekgeek Unlimited, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell for new videos dropping every Monday. And we out. Peace.